let me see, definitely have quorum. So the chair will be calling this meeting to order at 6:48 Mountain, 8:48 Eastern. The first thing on the agenda is let's do public comment to give any late stragglers time to come in before we take attendance. So after public comment, we'll then take attendance and then go to approval of the minutes. Just a reminder on public comment, members of the committee are welcome to speak in public comment if they have something they wish to say that doesn't strictly fit anywhere else in the agenda. I see Mr. Jacobs had his hand up, then Mr. Madden. So Mr. Jacobs.
I'll yield my place and time to Mr. Madden.
Okay, Mr. Madden.
Hello. I just wanted to thank all of the membership that is here that is not part of the committee. It's always good to have participation within the process. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madden. Star Child.
Yes, I thank you, Karen Ann, for posting the notice of this meeting yesterday. That's how I found out about it. The more that can be done for transparency and inclusion, the better. In line with that, I would like to suggest, I don't know if there are plans or current practices in place on this, but at the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, where I live, and most public meetings here that I go to, they allow public comment for each individual topic, not just at the very beginning of the meeting. And I would encourage us to do the same. I think that the Libertarian.
You're cutting out, Star Child, just an FYI. I think we lost Star Child. I'm going to give it one more moment. And if he doesn't come back, we'll go. Star Child, I think I hear you again. We lost you.
Oh, where did you lose me?
We lost you when you started talking about a public body that did public comment at the beginning of each item, and then you dropped off.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's most of the meetings that I go to here. Police commission meeting I was at here last week in San Francisco. Yeah, they allow public comment on every single item on the agenda. I think the Libertarian Party should be at least as good in its transparency practices as government bodies. If we can't meet up to their standard, I think we're definitely doing something wrong. So I would encourage the committee to adopt this, let everyone speak. I mean, to me, the gold standard is just let everybody who's present speak throughout the entire meeting. Well, obviously only committee members be able to vote, but everybody be able to be in the conversation. Short of that, I think letting people, comment on every item is the way to go. So I encourage the committee to do that. Hopefully be able to participate throughout the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Star Child. Mr. Jacobs.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to indicate for the latecomers, what I've indicated before. There's been a frequent topic regarding suspension of the rules in bylaws. There was a recent article published on this, not by me, by a Kirby Glad, PRP, in the National Parliamentarian. It is online. I will be producing a link probably in a few minutes for the latecomers. This has been a topic of several of your meetings. Also, Mr. Brown and myself have co-authored an article for another parliamentary magazine, Parliamentary Journal. If that is published, I will try to see if it is okay for the chair and for the members to see copies of that as well. I'll be posting the link in a few minutes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jacobs. And Star Child, your hand is still up, and I didn't see if it went back up or if that's an artifact. We can't hear you. I'm going to assume that is an artifact. And Madam Secretary, if you could take attendance, please.
Sure. Arrowwood, I'm here. Rocco? Am I being heard?
Yes, and I see
Oh.
Mr. Bracco, but
I do too.
He's muted.
Mr. Bracco, if you're speaking, you're muted. Could you call upon him last? Let's just go
Sure.
forward.
Sure. Sizelski?
I am here.
All right. Carlos?
Present.
Okay. Latham?
I'm here.
Martin?
Present.
Molman? Ken Molman? Come back. Mike Ruffo? Mike Ruffo? Okay. Mike Seebeck?
Lightfoot here.
All right, thank you. Okay, Paul Bracco?
Present. Sorry about that.
Okay, thanks, Paul. And Ken Molman? All right, Ken Molman and Mike Ruffo. All right, Madam Chair, we have Molman and Ruffo not here. I'll call the alternates. Dr. Chuck Moulton?
I see him. Dr. Moulton, if you're
Yes.
talking, you're muted. Okay,
Okay.
he might have gotten up to get a drink as well at the worst
Okay.
possible time. So maybe move on the alternates. We'll go back to Dr. Moulton.
Sure. Tommaso? Tommaso? Roberson?
Here.
Thank you. Greg Deal? Greg Deal? Roger Roots? Roger Roots? Data Logan? Data Logan? Dean Rogers?
I'm here.
All right. Dr. Chuck Moulton?
Okay, we're going to count him as absent until he can either type in chat or, and I'm going to text him right now and let him know he's frozen or whatever. But for right now, he'll be absent. So who will be the two alternates that will be sitting in?
Okay, it will be number 3, Dave Roberson. We'll replace Ken Molman for now. And Dean Rogers would be replacing Mr. Ruffo for now.
Okay,
Whew. Replacing Ken Molman, that's some big shoes.
I texted,
I'm here. Sorry about that.
okay. Oh, that's okay. Okay, sorry, Mr. Rogers. So right now then it will be Chuck Moulton and Mr. Roberson that will be sitting as primaries.
Okay. All right, we have a full complement then of 10.
Okay, next up on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. I had meetings plural there. That's not good. I'm going to be sharing my screen in a moment, but those were distributed. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Mr. Latham.
And I submitted some directly to our secretary. I don't know how she intends to let us know whether some of those were incorporated or not. That might change some people's view.
Did you get minutes corrections, Madam Secretary, directly from Mr. Latham?
Yes, I did. I think they were asking for explanations and I sent them on to Mr. Latham. I don't know if he received the email as yet.
Yeah, I received the email. I think it was just unclear to me whether those suggestions were incorporated or not. Just, I want to know what I'm voting on, whether it's just the draft that you sent out or whether you made any of the corrections I suggested.
Okay, well, I made the red to blue so far, but was waiting to hear back.
Okay, what we're going to do then, and I have to ask you, Mr. Latham, please always send corrections to everybody because they may have comment on them as well, and it's difficult for there to be a full committee discussion. I know sometimes we do that not to clog up the list, but it needs to go to everyone. So since everyone hasn't had a chance to see the suggestions, we can approve these in between the meeting by email ballot, or we could just approve 2 sets next time. So this is going to be postponed either to email or to next meeting to give chance for there to be a public discussion. Obviously, Madam Secretary has some questions for Mr. Latham on his suggestions. So if that's acceptable to everyone, we're going to move on to the agenda items. So Mr. Latham, you still have your hand raised. Is that to proactively get in line because this next item is one of your babies?
No, it's not, but maybe while I have the floor, I emailed to the list what I had just sent directly to the secretary, and I'll put my hand down.
Okay, and I'll probably have you, when we get to that point, stick it in chat as well. Part of the problem with emailing so close to the meeting is it's my screen that's being shared and I cannot get to my email during the meeting because it is my LNC secretary email and I can't risk having that flashed on screen because there is confidential things in there that could possibly be ascertained from the titles of emails. So I can't go to that email and grab anything out of it. But if the secretary has it, we can put it in chat or something like that. So what I'm going to do, you all should be seeing the agenda now. The last changes from the meeting I was not able to attend, I have substituted actually in this proposal P that I'm pulling up. Mr. Bracco's notes of blue and red is the current state of the revision 8 proposal. Purple is a pending amendment and green is a pending amendment to the amendment. So if I'm understanding properly, we are on a pending amendment to the amendment. That is where we are at procedurally. So to go to where it is green, just scrolling down here, is right there. And if you give me one moment before we get started on talking about the amendment to the amendment, just to let you know, on the prior iteration of substitute number 8 or version 8, whatever we're calling it, I had notes. I did stick those notes on the bottom of this document as well. So we still have those. They're not pending at all. Those were just my particular notes. We are on the amendment to the amendment. This might be a bit confusing to everyone because, coming in midstream this way. Whose amendment was that? Does anyone recall?
I believe the purple was mine. I'm not sure about the green.
Yeah, I was going to say it's something I support. It's either Paul or me. Maybe it's both of us. And can I just, because I was looking at that prior section, so jump up to 6A2.
Yes.
And then that last clause after the comma, and which ballot the delegate gives to their respective delegation chair. And just I notice, I'm wondering, this is kind of maybe helping us refresh our memory. If we pass the green amendment, is that going to render that 6A2 language, just last clause, unnecessary. So that
Let
was a
me see.
question that popped into my mind.
Well, there's, okay, I'm trying to get a handle on where we were at parliamentary wise. So the amendment was to strike all of number 6 above, correct? And replace it with this purple language. And then, so it was basically a substitution. So the first level of amendment is a motion to substitute. Yeah, this doesn't see, I'm going to handle this parliamentary wise a little bit different than might have been handled last meeting, because I don't think it was the most efficient way looking at it on the screen. So unless someone is going to object, this is how I suggest we handle this, that we're going to treat the purple amendment as a motion to substitute. When you're doing a motion to substitute, you can amend number 6 as it presently exists, and we can amend the substitute independently, and then the two will go head to head. So to answer your question, Mr. Latham, and I'm taking this out of this format here because I'm finding this kind of cumbersome, and I'm going to copy it down to the bottom of this document. So if I'm understanding your question, Mr. Latham, because we're going to treat this as a substitute, anything we do with this purple and green doesn't affect 6 until they go head to head. So the primary motion is 6. The substitute motion is this purple 7. There's a pending amendment to the substitute. Normally, we would perfect the original language first, but this is the parliamentary state we were left in. So I'm going to suggest that we perfect the substitute, and then we'll move to perfecting the primary. Then they'll both be open to perfection, and then we'll see which one wins in a head-to-head. I'm going to treat this green amendment to the amendment. It seems like both Mr. Bracco and Mr. Latham supported it. Do either of you wish to speak to this amendment to the substitute? Dr. Moulton, I'm just waiting to make sure that Mr. Latham or Mr. Bracco don't wish to speak to it. It was Mr. Latham's amendment. So Mr. Latham, did you wish to speak to it?
Well, I just want to say I appreciate that discussion because that helps me kind of refresh my memory as to where we were. I think we were basically, trying to side by side harmonize some of the terms we liked in 6, but also 7. So 7 accomplished some of the same goals. So that helps me understand kind of where we were procedurally. So that's all I wanted to add there. I will throw out this. I think the challenge we were also thinking about, and I didn't get to it, was the recount language. So in this purple, we're looking at 8. The issue is, how do we do a recount if we do electronic voting? And I guess that's 6D above. So just inviting people to be thinking about how we address a recount for electronic balloting. So that's it. But I don't have anything to add to the green language other than I support it.
Okay, I have a question. Is that, Mr. Bracco, we're in the purple? Okay, since this is a substitute, this is, I know there's a lot of really weird renumbering things here. This is another version of 6. Is that where it says 8? Was that supposed to be D?
I don't believe so, because I believe that most of this amendment, at least the initial form of this amendment, because I think we did do a few other things to it in that meeting, was your suggested language from last meeting. So I know for sure that we added the if approved at the beginning of 6, and there might have been a few other changes in there, but otherwise it was from that. And I don't believe it was. I think it was a separate number.
Let me look at my notes. I think I see my notes where I had it as a separate number. I'm trying to think if I had a reason for that.
I believe, reason or not, I believe that was how it was moved.
Okay, no problem.
And I do want to add some additional context. I recall a discussion at the end of that last meeting where the amendment to the amendment, it states, if contemporaneous physical ballots are used, these contemporaneous physical ballots, I think there was some discussion of, do we need to repeat contemporaneous physical? But I don't believe there was any motion made on that.
Right. Yes.
Okay, what I think might help, and I hope the committee members in line will indulge me, for everyone to understand, I think a reading aloud of what the primary motion says, and then a reading aloud of what the substitute motion says with that amendment might be helpful, because I think persons might be a bit confused as to the differences between the two in order to be able to meaningfully perfect both of them. So the primary motion is electronic balloting may be used instead of manual tabulation by affiliate delegation, provided that written notice of the electronic balloting system to be used is published on the party website at least 90 days prior to the regular convention and following the convention's approval. A delegate must be physically present to cast an electronic ballot. The electronic balloting system must provide for the following: A, accommodate each delegate's abilities to cast 1, an electronic ballot, or 2, a vote by a physical ballot accompanied by the delegate's contemporaneous completion of an electronic cast vote record, and which ballot the delegate gives to their respective delegation chair for placement into a designated envelope provided for this purpose. B, the system generates a report of votes by affiliate delegation for display to the convention. C, the system allows delegates to write cast-in votes. D, if a recount is successfully ordered, the recount must be done using the physical ballots collected by the delegation chairs. So that's the primary motion. The substitute, if the amendment to the substitute were to pass, would read, if approved, electronic balloting may be used instead of manual tabulation by state delegation, provided that written notice of the voting system to be used is published on the party website at least 90 days prior to the regular convention and must include provisions for the following. A, if contemporaneous physical ballots are used, contemporaneous physical ballots are completed and turned into each delegation chair and placed into a sealed envelope delivered to the tellers. B, a report is generated of votes by state delegation for display to the convention. C, delegates may cast write-in votes and must be present in the convention hall at the time of balloting. And then the next number, which would be 7. If a recount is successfully ordered, the recount must be done using the physical ballots collected by the delegation chairs. Okay, Dr. Moulton, on the amendment to the substitute.
I move that we replace those contemporaneous physical ballots with they.
We would need to vote down this first because we are on a second level of amendment and we
Okay,
can't have a tertiary.
in that case, I will speak to the amendment and encourage everyone to vote no. It's really redundant and wordy.
Thank you. Mr. Seebeck?
Yeah, I just got a point of information. What is the use of the term contemporaneous here for? It doesn't make any sense to me.
I can explain that if you wish, since that was taken from my notes.
Yeah, please.
So it means at the same time, well, I mean, I know you know what contemporaneous means, but the purpose of it is if there is an electronic vote, there's also required to be a physical ballot as well that's done at the same time. To have a backup for a recount if one is successfully ordered. If it's not done contemporaneously, people will already know the results of what the electronic ballot said and can maybe fill out their physical ballots different than they did their electronic ballot. If you're going to have two identical things, one in electronic form and one in physical form, they need to be done at the same time, i.e. contemporaneously.
That actually would be simultaneous, not contemporaneous, but okay.
I think I'm going to look up the word here. Simultaneously, I think means literally at the same time, and a human being can't do that literally at the same time. I do think contemporaneous is the correct word, but I want to look up the definition of that because it wouldn't be the first time that a word didn't mean what I thought it meant. Let me look up contemporaneous and doing that on my phone. Occurring in the same period of time. I think contemporaneous is the proper word here, but of course it is open to amendment. Mr. Bracco.
Yes, Madam Chair. So you had read out the main motion and the substitute, but I believe that there are other parts of the main motion that basically are not up for being substituted. I think specifically Rule 1, like 3. These are not big ones. I think just to give everybody context. And then Rule 3, Section 2 has some changes. And then actually down at the bottom, I think below the section that we're working on, Rule 7, Section 3 has changes. I don't believe that any of those are, unless you...
They're not. Okay, we had a proposal, which was all of those things. There was an amendment by substitution for just part of that. So those aren't even being talked about right now. So they wouldn't be read out until we resolve this.
Okay, I just figured it would be valuable for everyone to have context.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Latham.
Yeah, well, since we're kind of getting into the issue, I know a question that had come up for many committee members at the last meeting was what the intention of this, contemporaneous process would be. And I think you'd explained it a bit, so people, I think, have a better sense. And maybe it's just worth expressing the intention again. I tried to come up in my mind a rationale for doing it. And one was, because it's not my favorite approach, actually. So my favorite approach is an amendment I took out, and I think I want to put back in down the road, which is you complete electronic ballot, and that generates a print that you then do. Now, however, so the contemporaneous one that we're talking about, by the way, maybe a better word I was looking for, rather than at the same time, maybe close in time, maybe someone throw a proximate into a thesaurus and see if there are any close words there. But coming back to it, why might we want to do it this way, the contemporaneous one? And I think it's the preparation of the ballots. If we talked about, we go to an electronic thing, we cast an electronic ballot, it spits something out of the printer, the delegate's going to have to, figure out which one is their actual ballot to then be putting in this envelope. Whereas if we do it this other way, this contemporaneous way that, we're talking about in the green, the ballot's going to be kind of blank. They're all going to be a standardized form. So the secretary or whoever prints out, let's say 1,000-ish ballots, then the delegate's going to handwrite, their choices on that. And then that's the ballot that ultimately gets counted. And again, there might be a hiccup. Does the delegate, do the same thing on the electronic that they did on their written ballot? Might they even complete an electronic ballot? We might want to be thinking about a way, but maybe we just leave that detail up to the, whoever is going to be in charge of administering that system. Maybe they don't, the delegation's votes aren't, the written ones aren't accepted until the electronic piece. We have some kind of record that an electronic one was done as well. Anyway, I did want to just kind of throw out that there had been a question as to what the intention of doing this side-by-side process was. I think, Madam Chair, you did a attempt to explain it. So, but I just wanted to add my additional rationale for why I think there could be value in that approach.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Latham, and Star Child in chat is echoing my concern. And I'm going to urge again the committee that we need to be very concerned about being stuck in our echo chamber here. That remember when we started this, we've realized this has failed multiple times before, and we're trying to give the delegates security. And it seems the longer the debate goes on, we've now just become convinced amongst ourselves that this is a great idea and forgot that the delegates might not be so crazy about it. And that we need to remember that we want to write something that's going to pass. Having Mr. Latham, this does not anticipate the secretary printing out 1,000 ballots. That's never been the case the way we do it now. There are usually index cards that are passed out. The word ballot is quite loose here. It would be the same exact way. The contemporaneous physical ballot would be however they're doing it now with the whatchamacallit, the index cards. As Star Child had said, the whole purpose, the only time that physical ballots become relevant is if a recount is ordered. It's not automatic. Those might just end up going into a big box that the secretary will do an after convention audit. A recount is going to require a majority vote. So very rarely will that happen unless people are doubting the electronic record. If they're doubting the electronic record, having the electronic record spit out an equally doubtful physical ballot is not granting the assurance that we need to give the delegates. The whole purpose of having a physical ballot is something that's separate from this electronic system that we are anticipating that the delegates might not trust. I'm taking my hand down. And we kind of got off the thing of that amendment, and that's my fault for allowing that to happen. Let's try to stick to this amendment and see if we can get to a vote on that so we can do some further amendments. Is there any further debate on the amendment to the substitute? One moment here. Let me lower my hand. Seeing no further debate, Madam Secretary, if you could take a roll call vote. What we're voting on is adding the phrase to the substitute 6A, if contemporaneous physical ballots are used, those.
Madam Chair, question if the effect of this amendment?
The effect of the amendment would be to add in that green language. And if you vote it down, it will be the way it was before. Since we haven't started voting yet, actually, I have an additional debate point. I am going to raise my hand. Well, I'm recognizing myself because then Ms. Arrowood, who had her hand raised. I'm actually seeing something now. Thank you for that question, Mr. Roberson, because it caused me to see something. Obviously, the committee can do whatever the committee wishes to do. I am urging voting this down, not just because it's a mouthful, but because it turns, if the idea of this substitute was to honor my notes, this mangles my notes. There's never supposed to be a question of if they're used. My intention in my notes is that they are in fact used. Adding this if in there, you might as well not even deal with my notes at all because you just gutted them. So I urge it to be voted down. It's a wordy mouthful and it turns the intent on its head, which of course the committee has every right to do, but that's why I'm arguing against it. Is there anyone else now that I've said some additional things that might raise additional thoughts? Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to the amendment to the substitute? Okay, now seeing none. Ms. Arrowood, we're voting on the green language. A yes vote will add it in. A no vote will get rid of it so that the language would just be the purple.
Arrowwood, I'm going to say no. Rocco,
No.
Sizelski,
No.
Latham,
No.
Martin,
No.
Moulton,
No.
Rowlett,
No.
Roberson,
No.
Seebeck, Mike Seebeck. I believe you're muted, Mr. Seebeck.
Please go back to him. I got a
All right.
private message. It might be from him.
Seebeck, please, if you're,
His
Yeah.
Zoom is frozen, so an alternate is going to vote in his place in this one. So continue.
okay, that would be Dean Rogers. Mr. Rogers, Dean Rogers, you're going to step up to membership.
I vote no.
All right, sir. Madam Chair, we have 9 noes, no yeses, and 1 abstain.
What?
We have no yes, no yeses,
And 9 no's.
9 noes, and 1 abstain.
Are you counting me as the abstention?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because I didn't explicitly say that. Okay, okay, I was just making sure because I was like, there isn't 11, so it just confused me. I'm sorry. Okay, that motion fails. We are back to. I'm going to make that purple. I'm going to ask the committee. It's generally, I know that's a different shade of purple, and it's going to bother everybody, including myself. It's generally advisable if we're going to work on perfection that perfecting, there's no such thing as perfection, perfecting the primary or the substitute, that we do them one at a time. And then when we have them both, they're both open to an amendment. I am intending on moving forward on perfecting the substitute first. But if whoever raises their hand first prefers to perfect the primary first, that's what we're going to do. Everyone's going to have an opportunity. So what order we do it in, it isn't like time's going to run out like on a board. It's just a matter of being orderly. Mr. Rolette, you had your hand up first.
Okay, hopefully this one's really quick. I move to, okay, in 6A, I move to add a comma after completed. Yep,
Okay,
strike the and.
you can.
Yeah.
Okay, is that it?
And put in a comma after chair.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm just going to highlight those changes so that we can, I probably should have did them in green. That shouldn't be a period, that should be a comma. Okay, thank you. So we do have an amendment to the substitute, so we will be
A
working on
point of
perfect.
privilege.
Yes, Dr. Moulton.
Could you admit Mr. Molman from the wait room?
Ah, I didn't hear it beep. Okay, we still have the two alternates sitting in because Mr. Seebeck had to drop out. He's having computer issues. I'll let you know when he comes back in, but Mr. Molman is now present with Mr. Seebeck being absent.
Okay.
Okay, we are on Mr. Roulette's amendment to the substitute. Mr. Latham.
Oh, I had a question to the main motion, but so that's why I took my hand down.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I think the language is pretty self-explanatory. Mr. Roulette, I did not give you an opportunity to speak to it. Did you wish to?
Nope.
Okay, is there any further debate on the amendment to the substitute, which is to add a comma in 6A after the word completed, strike the word and then add a comma after chair to add a Oxford comma sequence here of contemporaneous physical ballots are completed, turned into each delegation chair, and placed into a sealed envelope and delivered to the tellers. Okay, I'm going to ask, is there any objection to this amendment? Okay, seeing none. Then I'll get rid of these highlights here. So we are on further amendments to the substitute, Mr. Bracco.
Yes. So in 6C, I would like to move to add a period after votes, strike the word and, add the word delegates, and then that delegates must be present in the convention hall at the time of balloting be created as 6D.
Okay, give me one moment.
Would it be all right if I were to speak to this?
Oh yeah, keep
right
going.
now?
While speak while I'm doing all this.
So each of these bullet points are things that are required of the system that we're saying can be authorized by the delegates. And the other two are broken up into different sections because they're different things. It's just that these two things you can it must be able to cast write-in votes or allow for write-in votes, and the delegates must be present in the convention hall. They're two different things, and I just think that they should be two different like specific requirements called out rather than kind of jammed together. It just seemed a little bit awkward to me.
Okay, Mr. Molman.
Yeah, hi. First of all, I wanted to report that I was here. My apologies for the delay. Work ate my life again. And then I'm just trying to figure out where we are. It looks like we didn't get too much further than where we were at the end of the last meeting. And perhaps you've already answered this question. But is it the intent to require physical ballots in addition to the electronic balloting?
Yes. Sorry to be brusque. I didn't know if you wanted further, but we did discuss this in some detail.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's actually why we paused where we did, to have some debate on that perhaps. But I'll right now that is the purple now the main motion? Are we back at the main, or are we in an amendment?
No, let me let you know the parliamentary posture is the purple I'm treating as a substitute to the blue. So the blue is a portion, there's a larger amendment that deals with rules, but the blue is where we're dealing with now, with the purple being a motion by substitution to strike out all of the blue. And we're working on perfecting the substitute.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Mr. Martin.
Yes, I'm noticing that number 6 in the substitute here omits the language that requires the convention's approval. I'm assuming that omission is intentional but I don't recall any discussion on that point. So I'm not sure how I feel about that omission, but I just wanted to draw it to the committee's attention. And it does make me wonder whether the omission of that provision would cause delegates to tend to vote against this measure. I guess that's all I have. I could follow this up with an amendment to this substitute to add that clause, but before I do that, I would want to hear why people feel like maybe that it shouldn't be in there. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Martin. And that would be, right now we're on the amendment to the substitute, which is the second level of amendment. So if everyone could put a pin in that thought, once we can get to a point where we can do further amendments, that would certainly be in order if that's what people should do. I do have an answer for that, but I don't want to get off track on the amendment at this time. Mr. Latham, you had your hand raised. Did you unraise it? Oh, there you go, Mr. Latham.
Well, I unraise it, but I'm trying to actually figure out, I heard someone make an amendment and now I don't. Is it the highlighted version?
Yes, so the amendment is to put a period after write-in votes in 6C, strike the word and then move the rest of the sentence down to a new subsection D, but the remainder remains as it was. Delegates must be present in the convention hall at time of balloting. Okay. So basically we're striking C into its two separate parts.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any further debate on the amendment to the substitute? Seeing none, I'm going to ask, is there any objection to the amendment to the substitute? Seeing none, that passes. I would like to address now Mr. Martin's concern. It was put in chat, and that is the if approved, I believe is intended to cover that, though certainly an amendment to say if approved by the convention, that could be an amendment that would be in order. That is intended to be covered though by the if approved, though some may feel that might leave it ambiguous as to approved by who. Mr. Molman.
I believe we're to a point where a motion can be made to amend. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Molman.
I would like to move to amend to add by the convention behind if approved.
Okay, let me get that typed in. Do you wish to speak to that?
Yes. Because I have seen parliamentary shenanigans in the past, and because this is a critical voting item, I want to be as exact as possible on this. I'm usually someone who wants to strike words, but I believe this is important here.
Thank you, Mr. Molman. Mr. Latham, we are on the amendment to the substitute.
And I just took my hand down because I have
Okay.
a different amendment, so I didn't want to.
Okay, no problem. I
Jump
have some
in.
kind of weird, is anyone else seeing like a little ghost hand for Mr. Latham, or is it just my screen? Like it's not the full bright yellow, but it's like this dim red hand I just see floating. It's quite sinister.
It's just you.
Oh, okay. Well, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the amendment or debate to the amendment to the substitute? Yeah, the chair is asking then if there is any objection to the amendment to the substitute. Seeing none, that passes. Mr. Latham, I believe you had another amendment that you've been trying to get in there.
Thanks. And I did just drop this into the chat, but it would be to substitute 6A with the language in the chat, which I'll read. And part of it is to make it more active voice rather than passive voice, but also replace the word contemporaneous with proximately. So it would read delegates complete physical ballots proximately to electronic balloting, comma, turn each physical ballot into each delegation chair, comma, who then places each into a sealed envelope and delivers that envelope to the tellers, period.
I'm putting that on the screen and I'll highlight that. Would you like to speak to that?
I hope it's fairly self-explanatory. I think it just addresses the maybe contemporaneous proximate problem that some people have raised, makes it more active voice, and I think it's a little more specific as to who does what.
Mr. Bracco?
So parliamentary inquiry from a procedural standpoint, is there any difference between these two versions of 6A?
What do you mean?
Like, would we do anything differently if we were to adopt this amendment versus if we were to vote this amendment down?
Hold on, let me read it carefully. Well, it depends on if people, I think the word proximately is problematic. But if we're going to interpret the word proximately as it's intended to be the same as contemporaneously, then no.
Thank you.
Okay, I like the active voice better. I'm going to tell you why I will be urging this to be voted down, however, and a different change to the active voice be made to A. And Mr. Seebeck's re-entering, by the way, for the secretary. I think contemporaneous, like proximately just sounds weird. Proximately doesn't necessarily mean in time. It can mean like close in place. And I think that adds an ambiguity here, and it's very stilted language. It's not the way people talk. I know contemporaneous might not be the most common English word, but it certainly is more common than saying proximately to. Like, does it mean they have to do it sitting in their chair? And if they, I don't know, I just find that really weird, awkward language. And I think adding to electronic balloting when we're already talking about electronic balloting is just way more words. This is a very awkward wording. I think if we vote this down and instead change A to I don't even know what we could change it to. Something, if I don't mind the active voice, but I don't know. It's that something about the wording of this just doesn't sit right with me. Just it's awkward. Mr. Latham.
Oh, I threw a definition of proximate. It's the first one that comes up in Merriam-Webster, and it's immediately preceding or following. I looked for a word, look for a word that means close in time, and the signs point to proximate, and I could pull up synonyms, and they just approaching, impending, upcoming, coming, impending, nearing, imminent, and those just all don't quite seem to fit. And I know people are saying contemporaneous means close in time, but in the chat and just in mine, it's the same as simultaneous, which is at the same time. So, and I like the sounding of contemporaneous just as far as my ear goes to proximate, but we know that's not possible to be filling out the paper ballot, the physical ballot at the same time as voting electronically. And I don't want to run into a scenario where if our processes are judged by the letter of what we do, the strict, language that we're using, we potentially run into a problem on that ground. So, we could spell it out. Delegates complete physical ballots immediately prior to electronic balloting or immediately after, if we have a choice there. So that might be a way just to get rid of the word proximately if that's the word that we have the hang up on. So I'd be open to a change like that. But I did, but this amendment is number one, active voice, but also number two, I think there's a problem with contemporaneous or simultaneous.
I do want to interject some information. I'm taking a bit of a privilege, but I typed into Google, what is the difference between contemporaneous and simultaneous? And I'm at some grammar or English geek site. Contemporaneous refers to things that happened in or are associated with the same period of time, whereas simultaneous refers to things that happened at the same moment. Just throwing that out there. Mr. Seebeck.
Yeah, just I'm back on, and I apologize for for getting kicked off. My computer went nuts. Forgive me, but where are we?
Oh, no problem. If you look on the screen, Mr. Latham moved to strike 6A from the substitute and insert in its place with the highlighted language.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Dr. Moulton.
Yeah. On the subject of this, I just want to point out that I personally don't like the physical ballots at all. That I realize that's both in the original and in the amendment. I think that we're being Luddites here. I mean, if we have software that prints out a receipt, I mean, that's fine, but I think we lose a lot of the advantage of electronic balloting when we insist on recreating the same system we already have in parallel. I mean, I'm indifferent on the amendment because it really seems the same as the original, but I really don't like the physical ballot requirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moulton. So I am going to suggest, again, voting this down, and instead it says delegates complete contemporaneous physical ballots, turn them into each delegation chair, who then places whatever, to change it to the active voice, but keep it a lot simpler than it is now, and keep the word contemporaneous. Contemporaneous is the proper word here. I don't know why we're twisting ourselves in knots over this word. It's the proper word. Mr. Martin.
I'm sorry, I'll take my hand down.
Okay, Mr. Latham.
So can I amend this yellow part? So I've come around to contemporaneous because that's what I associate it with. But again, I was looking at those initial definitions. But so what you're saying, you would be okay with the highlighted A, but use contemporaneous. So delegates contemporaneously complete a physical ballot, comma, turn, do I have that right? And if I do have that right,
You can't amend at this point.
okay. So we just vote it down and then go to something maybe that is a compromise between the highlighted version and the version above.
Yes, Mr.
So
Latham.
Okay, so I support that.
Though you could ask to withdraw your motion, and I can then ask if the committee has an objection to withdrawing it, with the understanding that we're going to work on language using contemporaneous.
That's my request.
Is there any objection to Mr. Latham's request to withdraw his amendment? Seeing no objection, before a motion's actually made, I'd like to, because I'll recognize Mr. Latham to make a similar motion, but I just want to repeat what I'd said before for your consideration, Mr. Latham, but you can word it any way you wish. I want to keep this here just for a second for reference. I believe what I had said in debate was delegates complete contemporaneous physical ballots. And then the rest of that language stays the same as what you had previously moved. So I guess
I'll
the difference is instead of contemporaneously complete, I put complete contemporaneous and took out 2 electronic voting. In my
Right.
debate, though you can move it however you wish.
Well, is that showing up? I just
No.
threw that in the chat.
Let me see. Yeah, let me, is this what you wish to move?
Well, is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, then yes, that's what I move.
Okay, so let me stick that in here. Actually, before you actually, I'm fine. Never mind. No, that's good. It's a little bit different than what I said, but I'm fine with it.
Well, how would you want to change it?
No, I don't. I like
Okay.
it better. Okay, so there is now debate on this amendment to the amendment. Would anyone wish to, Mr. Roulette?
On this, this would preclude people punching into like their phone or their computer or whatever, their vote, and then having something else spit out a receipt. Like you would have to both mark a sheet of paper and push a button with this. And I don't, if I'm understanding this correctly, and you wouldn't with the original A, is that correct?
You know, it's the same as the original A, just in active voice, I think. And Mr. Latham, we can ask if there's an objection to pretending that this is what was originally typed. I do see something strange here. Turn each physical ballot into each delegation chair kind of makes it sound like they have to be turned into every single delegation chair, everybody's ballot. Where that second each probably should be there.
Yeah,
Turn
that's fine by me.
Is there any objection to us going back in time and pretending like that's what he originally said, since I don't think that's controversial? But if there's an objection, we'll do this the longer way, and that's perfectly your prerogative. Seeing no objection, we're gonna make this their delegation chair. Okay. Okay, Mr. Latham.
I did want to speak to Mr. Roulette's question and point, and this is, I believe it's the intention of this purple language to preclude just pure electronic voting and preclude electronic voting that would spit out, you know, a paper receipt or a physical ballot. So that's I think where we are in terms of the side by side. But my intention here in amending the purple language right now is at least to try to improve it as much as, you know, we can. But I guess I want to maybe clarify from our chair, if that's the intention to preclude, again, just pure electronic balloting or electronic balloting that then spits out a paper receipt or a physical ballot.
The language as written would preclude purely electronic balloting, but it would not preclude additional things. It would not preclude, in addition to this, something getting spit out. That's just not required. And it probably would, in practicality, cause it not to happen, because then you're adding a third thing. But here, saying that it must include provisions for the following does not entail, must exclude additional things. Did that make sense? Did that sufficiently answer your question, Mr. Latham?
Yeah, no, I think that's that explains the intent or the import of this purple language. This is not really to the highlighted amendment, but just the bigger picture.
Yes. Okay, would anyone else like to speak to the amendment to the substitute? Is there any objection to the amendment to the substitute? Mr. Rolette, you object? Okay.
Yeah, if I'm the only one, we don't have to go through a whole vote, but I like the original better.
No, let's get this on the record because you might not be the only one. Ms. Arrowood, if you would take a roll call vote, the vote is to strike 6A from the substitute and insert in that alternate A, which is highlighted.
Arrowwood, I'm going to say yes. Rocco?
Pass.
All right. Sazelski?
I'll go yes.
Latham?
Yes.
Martin?
No.
Molman?
Abstain.
Abstain, sir? Okay,
Yes, abstain.
all right. Rowlett?
Nope.
Okay. Chuck Moulton?
No.
Mike Seebeck?
Abstain.
All right. Mr. Bracco, you passed?
Yes, I'll abstain.
All right. Oh, boy. One, two, three. One, two, three. I have 1, 2, 3. 3 yes. And double check me, please. I have 3 no's. And 3 abstains.
So my vote will make it, well, I'm going to vote yes.
All right, so then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 yeses, 3 no's, and 3 abstains.
Okay, that amendment passes. So we're up, Mr. Molman,
I was going to make a motion. I
Go ahead.
didn't want to cut you off, though. I would like to move to strike 6A.
okay?
And I was going to wait until we got back to the main, but I figure if we're going to argue over the wording of this any longer, get this out of the way now. So the reason I moved to strike 6A is there are 2 reasons. Number one, I don't know that we have to have physical. But number 2, and actually more importantly, is if we do, this is probably the wrong place to put it. We're talking about what is required of an electronic system. There's nothing that prevents people from writing simply because they have an electronic device in their hands. There's nothing that prevents people from filling out a ballot, putting it in an envelope, any of that stuff. If we're just talking about an electronic system, right? It is, if approved by the convention, electronic balloting may be used as long as there's written notice, blah, 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 blah. The point of this is to outline the requirements of the electronic system, or at least that's what I believed it was to do. And that we have the report generated by by delegation. They can cast write-in votes. They have to be present. And if the recount's done, they have to be done using physical ballots, and that's fine. But I don't know that we need this measure here, and I don't know that it belongs here because it's not. There's nothing in an electronic system would preclude that ever happening. 6A, and I guess that's my point. So that's why I make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Molman. Okay, I see I'm next. I am going to speak against doing this and suggest something different. From what I understand, the purpose of the substitute was to put kind of slightly different versions of, the purpose of the substitute was to honor my notes and then also Mr. Latham's original. The substitute reflects my notes. The heart of my issue is this contemporaneous. And again, the committee is certainly free to gut it, but that then defeats the whole purpose of having a substitute to begin with, which what I understood was to have these ideas competing. If we want to strike the contemporaneous physical ballots, which I understand Mr. Latham's not a fan of, I say the proper place to do that is in the primary, which is his language, not to gut my language. Like, then there's no point to the substitute at all because this is central to my substitute. Well, I didn't move it, but that's where this language came from. I think having the two ideas of having a contemporaneous physical ballot and not having one do deserve to compete head to head, but this is the wrong place to strike it because it just like made hours of work to get to this point wasted. So I would highly suggest you vote this down here. And if this is something you'd like to strike it from the primary, not from the substitute. That is just torched hours of work to do it this way. Mr. Bracco.
So I guess this would be a parliamentary inquiry. If we were to vote this proposal down now and then dispense with the substitute, whether we do substitute or not, and we're back to the overall main motion, would it be in order for us to take 6A and move it somewhere else in the rules? Or would that be some sort of reconsideration?
No, let me think about it a second. No, I don't think it would be, I don't believe it would require reconsideration that it could be, that it can be moved. But thank you for reminding me, I didn't address that part, but Mr. Latham is ahead of me. So the answer to your question is it can be done later. Mr. Latham.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would just ask that, let's say we vote this proposed amendment down. I will be voting against it. I would still like you to keep that language because to Mr. Bracco's point, I would like to borrow some of the language from here and import it up to the original blue language.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Latham. So thank you, Mr. Bracco, for reminding me that I didn't address the issue of this being in the wrong place. I don't believe it is. This is not dealing simply with an electronic system. It's dealing with a process that includes an electronic system, and this is part of the process. This is exactly where it belongs, in my opinion. I'm trying to lower my hand. Is there any further debate on the amendment to the substitute, which is to strike 6A in its entirety? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you could take a roll call vote. Again, we're voting on striking 6A in its entirety from the substitute.
Arrowwood, I'm going to say no. Rocco?
No.
Szelski?
No.
Latham?
No.
Martin?
No.
Molman,
Yes.
I'm sorry, sir, could you repeat that?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just want to be sure. Rowlett,
No.
Dr. Chuck Moulton,
Yes.
Mike Seebeck.
Same.
I'm sorry, sir, did you say abstain?
Yes, I did.
All right, I just want to be sure. Thank you. Madam Chair, at this point, we have 2 yes, 5 no, and 1 abstain.
Okay, I will not be voting. That does not pass. Let me just get this back on the screen. I see Mr. Latham has his hands raised. And just to remind the committee that voting down something in the substitute does not preclude that amendment from being made to the primary. Mr. Latham.
Yeah, Madam Chair, so I would like to move an amendment I put into the chat, and this would be in the blue language. So if we're able to hop up to that.
Okay, to keep things orderly, I would like to finish perfecting the substitute. Then we move to perfecting the primary.
I almost thought it was perfect, so I jumped the gun there.
Well, we'll see. It may be in order if there's no further amendments to the substitute. So let's put a pin in that. I'm going to ask Mr. Rolette.
I have more commas and stuff.
Okay,
All right. For 6, just regular 6, not A, B, or C.
yes.
All right. I would like to add a comma after the word delegation. I would like to put a period after the word convention.
Let me just start highlighting these. So this is comma there. We want to put a period here. Whoops, added an L by accident. Okay.
And I would like to replace the word and with the words electronic balloting.
You could speak to that while I'm catching up here.
Okay. While other debates are going on, I tried out various different ways of making this look and sound good when you say it out loud. This is the best I got. It does add 2 words, but oh well. I think this looks better.
Thank you, Mr. Rolette. Would anyone else like to speak to this amendment to the substitute? Is there any objection to the amendment to the substitute? Okay, seeing none, that passes. Are there any further amendments to the substitute? While I'm catching up here. Mr. Rolette.
All right. It's more grammar stuff. I'll start it in a second here.
Okay, yep, nope, I'm caught up.
Okay. I'd like to delete the comma sorry, on 6A. I'd like to delete the comma after the word ballots.
Okay, I'm listening, so.
Okay, insert the word and.
That shouldn't be read, but I'm trying to do it so we can all make sense. Okay.
Change the word into the words into.
You don't want them to magically transform into being their delegation chair?
Yeah. Uh, and I think that's it. Who then places each into seal envelope and delivers that envelope to the. Yep, and that's it.
Would you like to speak to that?
No, thanks.
Would anyone else like to speak to Mr. Latham?
Well, now that I'm looking at that, so I wonder if turn is not our best word choice there. And I don't know if this is an appropriate, can we amend this proposal? But basically
No.
the idea is, okay, I'd maybe, I'm
You
thinking
can
about
say
something.
what you intend upon doing. If that helps people make up their mind that they want to make this change, you can state the
Yeah.
future intent.
I guess I would like to see, and deliver each physical ballot to their delegation chair. And then we maybe solve that problem. So, because I think that's a better word choice, I see myself voting against this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Latham. So in case it wasn't clear to everyone, because I understood I believe, I'm going to paraphrase you. Tell me if I'm paraphrasing you incorrectly. You are urging voting this down, and if it's voted down, you are going to offer an amendment to also delete the comma and add the word and, but delete the word turn, insert the word deliver, and delete the word to.
Delete the word in, keep the word to, so it would read, and deliver each physical ballot
Okay,
to.
gotcha.
Yeah.
And it really won't be all of these strikes and inserts. It will be rewriting the sentence because you can't separate words like this, but I think everyone's getting the idea. Mr. Bracco?
If this amendment were to pass and Mr. Latham were to make that theoretical amendment to strike the word in, is that just a regular amendment that would not be any sort of higher threshold?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
I guess it's like, because we're creating that word now and then we're striking it like potentially in 30 seconds or something.
But it's part of it's subsumed into a larger rewrite, because the way it'll actually be done is to delete that entire phrase and rewrite it. So instead of instead of turn each physical ballot, instead of comma, turn each physical ballot into their delegation chair, it'd be to strike that entire phrase and make it and deliver each physical ballot to their delegation chair.
So I guess what I'm really getting at is there anything that's mutually exclusive about this amendment and the theoretical amendment that Mr. Latham had talked about?
I'm not sure what you mean by mutually exclusive.
If we were, I'm trying to see if there's any reason why we can't vote for both. Because I think there are good parts of this amendment, and then if Mr. Latham wants to refine it further, I think that could be fine too. But that's just my idea, so I'll be quiet now.
Okay, I'm going to remind everyone of something that I think Mr. Mulman will remember at this point. There could be some things we were doing here that are technically wrong. No one's rights are being violated, and I believe that the rules serve us. We don't serve the rules. I want to get to where this committee wants, and I'm not going to make us do 10 cartwheels standing on our pinkies to get there. So we'll get there however we need to, as long as nobody here is being trampled on, which isn't going to happen in this circumstance. So, is there any further debate? So, to be clear, Mr. Bracco, if this is voted for and Mr. Latham wants to tweak it further, unless someone's going to raise a point of order, I'm going to allow it. Okay. I'm going to ask, is there any knowing that, Mr. Latham, just so you know, is there any objection to this amendment? Mr. Latham, do you have an objection or was there a question?
Well, no, that's the objection because
Okay.
I favor deliver to rather than and turn into.
Understanding that I'm going to allow you to make that amendment even if this passes, so it will
Oh,
take,
okay. So I think that's part of Mr. Bracco's. I'm not precluded from.
no.
Okay,
I
then I
think
don't have an
technically you
objection.
might be, but I'm not doing that.
All right.
Because I think that is just getting way too anal, like that's where people start hating Robert's Rules of Order. Okay, so are you withdrawing your objection, Mr. Latham?
Yes.
Okay, so this passes. Now I'm going to recognize Mr. Latham to make some further amendments. Let me just get the highlights off the screen here. Go ahead, Mr. Latham. I know the purple's a different color. I can't help it.
All right. So just move to strike the word turn, replace it with the word deliver, and strike the word in after ballot.
Just for when you guys go to your home states and things like that, just know this is a bit heretical. Technically, what we're doing is striking this whole phrase and rewriting it because you can't separate amendments technically with all these different words. But I'm not playing that game because I think we're getting where we want to go, which is the purpose of rules. But I just don't want you going to your home states and saying, oh, but it was allowed there. I'm letting you know we're committing a little heresy here. So feel very, very naughty. Okay. So I know the purple is a little bit of a different color. It is bothering me. But what the amendment is to strike the word turn, add the word deliver, strike the word in, so that it would read, delegates complete contemporaneous physical ballots and deliver each physical ballot to their delegation chair. The rest has already been taken care of. Okay. Would anyone like to speak to this amendment, Mr. Bracco?
Yes, I would like to speak in favor of this amendment. And the word deliver is also used in this very same sentence later on to describe the exact same activity of giving a paper thing to somebody else. I think we should be consistent.
Thank you, Mr. Bracco. Is there any further debate? Is there any objection to this amendment? Seeing none, this passes. Are there further amendments to substitute Mr. Martin?
Yes, in number 6, I move to strike the phrase by state delegation. Now, may I speak to that?
Yeah, one moment. Let me, because it's really driving me batty.
Sure.
Okay, that's closer. Okay. That purple was, and this red here is, just give me one. Okay, much better. Now my eyes I'm not getting Forrest Whitaker eye. So you want to strike by state delegation right here.
That is correct. I may have missed something. I may be missing something here, but I really don't understand what that phrase is doing here. If somebody can enlighten me on that, I will be happy to withdraw this amendment. But otherwise, it just seems weird and redundant to me. And with that, I will pass.
Okay, I'll explain it. I'm treating that as a point of parliamentary inquiry. The current process, if we don't do electronic ballot, is manual tabulation by state delegation, because what the tellers don't count the individual ballots themselves. The way it works now is the individual delegates fill out an index card or whatever it might be and turn it into their state delegation chair, who tabulates their delegation and fills out a delegation chair tally sheet. That tally sheet then gets turned into the tellers. So the tabulation is by state delegation.
I understand, and I withdraw my amendment.
Is there any objection to Mr. Martin withdrawing his amendment? Okay, seeing none, that amendment is withdrawn. Is there any further amendments to the substitute? Okay, now we get to start the fun all over again. We are going to perfect the primary. Mr. Latham.
Sure. So first I want to tackle that 6A and all.
Where you put it in the chat, that thing you put in the chat.
Yep.
Okay,
Just
let me
doing
copy
the
that.
cut and paste job.
I'm doing that already.
Oh, good.
Okay, so 6A, I just wanted to make sure it might come up weird here because you know how. Let me try to make this a little prettier. Okay, so, well, damn it, that made me, hold on. Oh, I didn't mean to do it that way, because we've got to see what was there before. Okay, never mind, let me do this again. So you're wanting to strike the current 6A and substitute it and put in, I don't hate using the word substitute, but it is, and put in this language instead.
Yes.
Okay.
That's probably the cleanest way to do it.
Yes, it is. Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Latham?
Yeah, so this language, and if you look at the original 6A, we have just a pure electronic ballot. Then we have in 2 the process that we've been kind of talking about in the substitute. I hope it's the same. The intent is to have it be the same. If we need to make some conforming amendments elsewhere, we can make it the same. But this gives us some other options. So one, again, would just be a pure electronic ballot. I know some people love that, not kill as many trees. And then an interim version, which would not require that a delegate complete contemporaneously a physical ballot, but they would cast an electronic ballot, and that result would be the spitting out of the conforming physical ballot or some kind of paper receipt. So that's the intention of this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Latham. I know everyone's taken a look at this, so I'm going to give a moment before I ask anything further, and I'm reading over it myself. Okay, is there any further debate on this amendment? Is there any objection to this amendment? Okay, seeing none, that amendment passes. Let me get the highlight off. Is there any further amendment to the primary? I don't know whose hand was up first, but since Mr. Latham, you just made an amendment, I'm going to call on Mr. Bracco first. Mr. Bracco.
So just as it is in the substitute, I'd like to take the if approved by the convention at the start of 6 and add that to the start of 6 in the primary.
Okay, so you want to add here if approved by the convention, and then that would be small letter there. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Bracco?
I think that this was good to add, and I think that I think that this is shaping up to be basically a head-to-head between, do we have 6-1A or equivalent in the primary versus the substitute, which does not have that. So I just kind of want to get it closer to that because I'm pretty sure that's where this is heading.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Yeah, so the proposed amendment here is redundant to the last clause of that sentence, which reads, "and following the convention's approval." So I wouldn't want to do that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. I'm going to commit a little bit of heresy here. Mr. Bracco, did you just not see that in there? Or was your intention to strike "and following the convention's approval" and instead start it with "approved by the convention"?
I guess I just didn't see it there. So I'll withdraw if nobody has objections.
Is there any objection to Mr. Bracco withdrawing his amendment? It will not preclude somebody else from making this amendment that would include striking that other phrase in case someone's in love with it. Mr. Roulette, do you?
I object
Okay,
if and only if it would be faster to just get this done and then take that one out. Actually, it's probably faster to just make a different amendment. Never mind, I do not object.
okay, Mr. Latham, do you object? You have your hand raised, Mr. Latham?
Oh, yeah, I have no objection. I
Okay.
thought we were done.
Okay,
Mr.
just wanna
Bracco
make
had
sure.
withdrawn his deal, and I was going to basically move the same intended amendment, but
Whoops. Okay, so Mr. Latham,
oh, except now you deleted what? Okay, well, wait, I can read. So add at the beginning, if approved by the convention, comma.
well, I had to delete it because it was withdrawn. And so comma, and then that would be a small,
Right. And then at the end, after regular convention, let's just put a period there and delete the rest. Because yeah, I think right now at this point, my intention would be to make these two head to head. The only significant difference is going to be that stuff in 6A1 and 6A2.
would anyone else like to speak to the amendment to the primary? Seeing none, is there any objection to the amendment to the primary motion? Okay, seeing none, this passes. Let me just get this highlighting off the screen. Mr. Molman.
Yes, I would like to make an amendment. Let you catch up there.
Okay, one moment. Let me just get rid of all. Why did it do that? Bad Google.
Hate you.
Text. There we go. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Molman.
All right, in 6D, down where it says using the physical ballots, I would like to strike the word "the."
Okay. Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Molman?
I would. In a hypothetical scenario where we may not have done simultaneous, contemporaneous physical ballots and electronic ballots, and a recount would be necessary and ordered, then they would require the physical ballots, right? But the physical ballots don't exist yet, right? Because they weren't done yet. So in that scenario, using physical ballots is to say that's how the recount would occur with physical ballots. but not the physical ballots, because the physical ballots don't exist yet, if that makes sense. So that's why I make that motion.
Thank you. Pardon me, I drink a soda too fast. Mr. Molman. Mr. Rogers? Mr. Rogers, we can't hear you.
I apologize. I wanted to address 6A. So are we done with the other?
No, I'll get you in line. For that, we need to deal with this deleting of the.
Yeah, I agree. I'll wait.
Mr. Latham?
We don't want to delete the. It's a great, I think, 80s, 90s band. But I guess I have a question for the sponsor. Because I guess this is the challenge we have. If we're doing a purely electronic ballot, then how do we do the recount? And I think that's, so I didn't understand, Ken, your point about these ballots don't exist yet. I don't think this amendment quite gets us there yet, unless you're saying we would start electronic, there would be an order for a recount, and then we'd print at that point. Because that's just not what is clear to me at this point.
It would either be a print or, it would have to be new physical ballots produced at that time. If it's a purely electronic scenario, right, there are no paper ballots at that point. So somehow they would have to be generated. How? I don't know. But that's the provision right now. We can talk about whether that's good or not, but just looking at the language saying the physical ballots when there were no physical ballots doesn't make any sense. If we strike the word the, then it infers that if the recount is successfully ordered, the recount must be done using physical ballots collected by the delegation chairs. Right, so that means that it will have to be done, the recount will have to be done somehow on paper. But that's not, like I said, that's the issue with the purely electronic, is that there would be no physical ballots. So the physical ballots don't exist yet. That makes sense.
And I'm going to call back on Mr. Latham. Mr. Madden pointed out, I believe, which is a typo, and not a typo. A typo insinuates that I typed something incorrectly. I do believe Mr. Latham, when he put it into chat, might have typed something.
Yeah, my
incorrectly.
bad.
I believe, was physical supposed to be their electronic?
Right.
And I think that's pretty obvious. I'm going to make that change. I think that's very obvious. That's what your intent was. And this was a scrivener's error on your part. And unless somebody screams and yells, I'm just fixing it. Okay, Mr. Latham, I'm sorry.
And electronic.
Gotcha.
Oh, and not
you,
election. Yeah.
Right. An electronic, sorry. You had your hand raised when Mr. Molman was talking, because I think you wanted to finish your point about his amendment.
Yeah, thank you. Well, no, it's in response to that. So here's kind of what I was thinking on this recount question and why maybe the is still appropriate, because the idea I had in mind was this. If a recount is successfully ordered for elections conducted pursuant to the 6A2 or 6A3, so those style of elections, not a purely electronic election, then you do the physical ballots. And then if you did a 6A1 election, you could do the recount in a different way. Some might say you don't even need to print out anything. You could say generate it all to PDF, and the PDFs could be checked, or there could be some other way of doing it that I'm not thinking of. So anyway, that's why I was thinking D still needs some work just to accommodate recounts for the two different kinds of systems, because I think you can do a recount differently for just purely electronic balloting that you would not need to do for ones in which you generated a physical ballot.
Okay, Mr. Bracco?
So I think, as Mr. Latham said, if the 6A2 or 6A3 options were followed, those were what was selected, I think that the recount requirement would be fine. If we go with 6A1, I think, as Mr. Molman said, the physical ballots don't yet exist. But if we were to produce them, a recount, I assume, would be called after the results of the electronic only election were to have happened. If we then see the results, and after seeing the results, then somehow produce the physical ballots, and let's assume that there wasn't some kind of like way of printing it from the electronic recording, isn't that kind of like a revote? It's not even a recount. It's just do the election again, basically. Is it even a recount?
It is not. You are correct. Mr. Molman?
Yes. Yeah, and I'm definitely, I tend to agree with the points that have just been made. I think now, in looking at this, I think the issue is that if you're going to have a split scenario, you'd have to put D under some subsection under 2 or 3, right? It's like, that gets really weird and funky. And then I got thinking about it, and the more I think about it, the more I think we should strike 1, keep 2, maybe alter 2 a little bit to may say that it enables the printing of physical ballots, and then keep the in D. So at this point, I'm probably going to vote against my own motion that I made, because I think that may be the more elegant solution, is to say we do electronic balloting, and there's always the possibility of having a physical ballot, rather than trying to have some sort of split scenario where sometimes there may not be, sometimes there may be. As long as we have the ability to print those ballots, or if they are accompanied with, then there would always be physical ballots, thus the physical ballots would be okay. And that I think that's where I've come to now in pondering all that, and I apologize to people for walking through that thought process, but that's, I think, where I'm at now.
Okay, what I'm going to ask, I understood everything you just said. I'm not sure everyone felt, my God, this program is driving me batty. Stop it. There we go. I think what might be more elegant right now is just to withdraw your amendment, recognizing that the discussion revealed some issues that need to be worked on that are greater than this. Are you okay with us proceeding that way, Mr. Molman?
If the body has no objection, I am more than happy to withdraw that motion.
Is there any objection to Mr. Molman withdrawing that amendment so that the broader issue that was revealed can be worked on? Hearing none, that amendment is withdrawn. Now, however, Mr. Molman, I did tell Mr. Rogers that once we got to a point of this point, I'd recognize him. We can always go back to what you want to do, but Mr. Rogers is next on deck. Mr. Rogers.
Not a problem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you'll look at the last sentence of paragraph 6, it introduces a list of requirements. The electronic balloting system must provide for the following. So now there's a few things here that the balloting system must provide. The word accommodate throws this all completely off. Okay. All right. What should accommodate should be struck, and 1, 2, and 3 should be changed to A, B, and C. And A should say, if I can read it as a complete sentence, the electronic balloting system must provide for the following. A, each delegate to have the ability to cast an electronic ballot. And then B would be an electronic ballot that results, and then C would be a vote by requires the contemporaneous completion of a physical ballot. The challenge that you have is consider a delegate that doesn't have a phone. Consider a delegate that doesn't have an ability to cast a vote. You're now not going to be able to hold an electronic vote. But the way this is worded right now, that still remains a problem. The electronic balloting system must provide for must provide. Does that mean you have to provide the delegate a phone? You got to provide the delegate a button? You got to do, what if they don't have that? You're going to have to provide that in order to conduct an electronic ballot. Now, if that's what you're going to do, then fine, but we're not accommodating the people that don't have the ability. All right, so strike accommodate and then just take must provide for the following. A, each delegate must have the ability to cast an electronic ballot. So if I were to make a motion, it would be to strike A.
Yeah, I have one question. Are you seated as a primary right now? You're fully allowed to debate if you're alternate, but
No, ma'am.
okay,
I am not a primary.
You're making a suggestion. Gotcha. Thank you.
I am. I'm just raising this that it doesn't make any sense. You know, you have these double colons and it just doesn't follow. Follow with the list of your requirements. And the first requirement seems to be each delegate must have the ability to cast an electronic ballot. Then you go on to your other two requirements. But you're not accommodating anybody. It's like a wheelchair thing, a handicap thing. Well, if they don't have the ability to vote, are you still going to have an electronic ballot? And I just raised that now for the members of the committee to consider, but it just doesn't work the way it's written. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Latham.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Maybe that could be worded slightly different. I still like the word accommodation, but it's for the point that was made, because I do think that whether it's the convention or a affiliate delegation is going to need to have a laptop or something so that someone who didn't bring their own, has no electronic means to vote, has the ability to vote. So accommodation, I think, is important to include somewhere there so that can happen. So that's all I was going to add there. But that language could be maybe made a little better.
Okay, now we have Mr. Molman, who I think had some amendments.
I do. Okay. What I would like to do is move to amend 6A, and then also there'll be parts beyond that. I would like to strike the word accommodate, as suggested.
Okay.
I would like to, instead of having the possessive of delegates, would say each delegate has the ability.
Okay, here's the way I think we need to do this. Hold on. We're going to do this a little bit different. I'm going to copy and paste this. One second. Me and this, and we're just going to, because otherwise it's going to get super, super messy. Are all of your changes going to be on 6A?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair.
So what I'm going to take this is you're moving to strike 6A and replace it with, how do you want this first part to read?
That'll work. Each delegate has the ability to cast.
Okay.
Take away the colon behind cast. Delete all of number 1. Yep, number 2 is going to stay there. That's okay. Leave it up there.
Okay, hold on.
No problem. Just, yep. An electronic ballot that results in the printing. Replace results in with allows for.
Did you want enables is what you said before?
Yes, I'm sorry, enables. Yes, that is, yes. Results in becomes enables. Thank you. And then take number 3 and jam it up there. Yeah, just make this one sentence. There we go. Yay. That.
Okay, so
Now we have a
Mr.
physical ballot. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, you had another change?
No, that's the end of the change. Sorry.
Okay.
That's the motion.
Would you like to speak to this? Now, I know you kind of did before, but we had a little bit of interruption between there.
Yes, not a problem. So I took what was said about accommodate, and I think that actually makes sense, that we are giving people 90 days notice that if they're going to be a delegate, they better bring something that is going to be capable of voting. Like, that's a thing. We did give them 90 days of notice. In this wording, it enables the printing but doesn't require it, which means that we can do the electronic voting, but we have a mechanism to produce the physical ballots if we need to do the recount, or we have the ability to do an electronic ballot accompanied by the physical ballot. And so that leaves, again, we will have the physical ballots in either of those scenarios. So we have 2 scenarios, one where it's all electronic unless there's a recount, and one that's electronic and physical at the same time. Either way, there's a physical ballot. And I think that leaves the decision up to the convention committee or whoever's deciding this, I can't remember who, on the system, right? And what it can do. It can do either one or it could do both. And then it will be up to the delegates to accept that system or not. And I think that solves the issues I had with this when I thought through all this. So either way, we can end up with a physical ballot. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, Mr. Latham?
Madam Chair, is it appropriate to make a motion to extend our time for 15 minutes?
Yes. And I'm just going to give some information to the committee. I do have to leave for the airport. 15 minutes will not interfere with that. Further extensions will start to. Is there any objection to extending for 15 minutes? Hearing no objection, time is extended. Mr. Latham, did you wish to speak beyond that?
I do. Yeah. And I guess the reason again I included that 6A1 is I have just heard in our discussion there is a constituency, I think, on this committee for just having a purely electronic ballot with nothing that would be printed. So that's there to accommodate that. Having said that, I mean, I probably fall into the camp that for this first go around, we do need something that's contemporaneous, but I think I do want the people who just want the option for a purely electronic ballot to be heard. So that's, I will at least hope in our process that we allow those people to vote just so we can see where the support is on this committee for including just purely electronic as an option. And maybe that'll show up in this vote, because this vote, I guess, it eliminates that as an option. So maybe I would find myself, even though ultimately I think I favor Mr. Melman's amendment, I don't want to foreclose the ability of folks who favor just a purely electronic ballot to have a vote on that.
Hey, Mr. Bracco?
Sure. So I'd like to speak in favor of this amendment. 2 reasons. One, I don't think that we should be putting. I am intrigued and open to the idea of purely electronic voting if it's done well. However, I don't think that should be our proposal. I think that we should be taking a smaller step in the main proposal. And if we are to do, like, I don't think that the opinion of this committee really matters whether we have electronic voting or not. It's really the delegates. So I think that rather than trying to negotiate within the committee, if we are going to do it at all, then the appropriate way to do it would be with a minority report and just put the question before the delegates. Do you even want to consider allowing pure electronic voting, or just not now, come back some other year? I don't know what the answer is to that. I'd rather get some form of electronic voting in, even if it's okay, you have to do some physical ballot stuff, and that's fine. I would probably say I fall into the we should allow for electronic voting camp. It's of course a delegate approval, but I don't think we should put it in our proposal. I think we should leave our proposal as a more conservative change. And if we want to be more radical, we do this through a minority report, put it before the delegates, let them decide.
Okay, just remember, Mr. Brecko, that there isn't an automatic right at this point to hear minority reports and bylaws. I think the delegates will hear it, but just saying it's not like platform, we're trying to fix that as well, but it's not fixed yet. Mr. Molman.
I just wanted to note that I actually am in the camp of, as long as it's an auditable system, I like electronic voting. I think this proposal puts us in a spot where ideally we're going to do electronic votes unless something's really contested, and then we will have the fallback mechanism of printing out everything and doing the hand count. And I'm hoping that this maximizes the chance of this passing. And that, maybe in another couple of conventions after this, they can tweak it even further and go to a pure electronic, take away the requirement to have to be able to print. But at the same time, as long as the confidence is high, then there won't be any printing anyway. So I'm hoping that, as one who wants all electronic, that this is the step we need to get there. If not, immediately in a couple of conventions.
Thank you, Mr. Molman. I think we're viewing this wrong. And I actually, with this change, am much more favorably disposed to the primary than I was before. Unless there's a recount, it is purely electronic. I think people focusing on this purely electronic, you have the emphasis on the wrong syllable. What you're doing with this whole idea of purely electronic is foreclosing a meaningful recount. So I think what you should be emphasizing on is whether a meaningful recount is possible, not whether purely electronic, because if they pick the first half before the or, an electronic ballot that enables the printing of a conforming physical ballot, unless there's a recount, that is purely electronic. So this whole, and I'm sorry, sometimes I use words, I'm very colorful. I don't mean this at all negatively. But I think the way we're talking is starting to get almost into fetishistic language over purely electronic, when in fact, this is what this amendment does. It is allowing for it. I think we need to start thinking more about being a high priority of trust and being able to have a meaningful recount. Mr. Martin.
Yeah, I do. I want to thank Mr. Rogers for his comment. I do think that this amendment does improve the primary. However, I would like to actually I intend to introduce an amendment. If this passes, I intend to introduce an amendment that changes the language from that enables the printing of a conforming physical ballot to something like that produces a conforming printed ballot to be retained by the delegate. And then so that 6D can be done by collecting those ballots. That way we have covered the base on how a recount could be done. And we have clarified that each delegate will receive a printed ballot. When I voted last at a government election, I did not receive a printed receipt of any sort. I got nothing. And that was actually a missing for me, partly because I wanted to know that my ballot was entered and counted correctly, but also because I wanted a reminder of how I voted, something I could take with me that reminded me of how I voted. So I think a printed receipt or a printed physical ballot after voting electronically is really just what I would call an ordinary exercise of integrity. With that, I yield the floor.
Mr. Latham?
Right. And maybe following up on Mr. Martin's point, I think one piece we're missing is our language that we added in the substitute about getting these physical ballots. And I liked, by the way, Frank, your proposed amendment there. So this is not speaking against that, but the idea that the delegate would keep that, I think, is problematic given the other language about this physical ballot would be put into a sealed envelope given to delegation chairs. So there's still that language, I think, that needs to be added from that substitute that's still not here in this one. And so I think we need to add that. And by the way, I'm coming around on the highlighted language. So the people who seem to have expressed a favoritism for electronic ballot are just like, yeah, I want that ultimately, but I'm not quite there yet. And we should, take a conservative approach to this. So right now I would be voting in favor of this.
Mr. Rogers, if you could mute.
So sorry.
Oh, no worries. Would anyone else like to speak to Mr. Molman's amendment to the primary? Okay, I'm gonna get really risky here. Is there any objection to Mr. Molman's amendment to the primary? Woot. Okay. Let's. Oh wait, Mr. Latham, did you have an objection?
No, I was getting
Okay.
in line to make an amendment.
Okay, you scared me for a second there because it's like, woo. All righty. So let's get this. Now, remind everyone we've got 4 minutes. Mr. Latham.
And maybe this is just to get it in the queue for next time, but can we look at this language that we have in the substitute about getting the, where
I'm
is
talking
it?
about
There it is.
deliver.
That stuff. Yeah, where delegates complete contemporaneous and deliver, who then places. So where is it already there?
No, it's not. And if you,
So where's it gonna go?
here's my suggestion to you, just think about it. I
Okay.
think you would have to take Mr. Martin's, I think we would have to rewrite a slightly bit more, and it wouldn't be enables, that part A would have to require it and be given to the delegate. I'm being very sloppy here. I'm just kind of summarizing what he had to say. And I think you would add a new subparagraph, which would become B, that the physical ballots, because either way from A, you're going to have a physical ballot. It's either printed by the
Okay.
system or it's the one they did themselves, then get delivered to the delegation chair. So I think A needs a rewrite according to what Mr. Martin said in a new paragraph added with the procedure about
Okay.
delivering to
Well,
the
how about
chair.
this? Let me try this on the fly. So A would be amended. Maybe we need to copy it and just put a section
Yep.
below.
That's what I'm going to do.
So I think I heard cast an electronic ballot that produces a conforming, so enables the printing yet, that would just be replaced with produces. And then can we put just a sub 1 after that, if that hopefully solves? No?
I should
Well, what?
Okay, that produces a conforming physical ballot or, okay. I don't think you're looking for a sub. I think you're just looking for another letter.
Another letter? A what?
No, B would move down. So it
Oh,
wouldn't be B, C, D. It would be
gotcha.
C, D,
Okay.
E, and you would have a B that would deal with that procedure of delivering.
Okay, and now I guess we need to scroll down because I need to see what language we'd be pulling from. So
I think you were looking for something like delegates shall deliver their physical ballot to
Yeah.
their delegation chair.
Yeah.
who look up.
delegate shall deliver. Yes.
So hold on, so this would be a new B. And B, delegates.
Somebody's saying in the chat, shall is a bad word. Must? Will then? What have we been using? Well, we have must. I see we have recount must be done. How about must instead of shall?
Your style.
Ah,
Delegates must deliver?
that's what you just said. I'm not gonna,
Okay.
I find that whole shall debate really dumb, to be honest with you.
And
I
then
don't-
just delegates.
Let me get this out of purple because it's not
Okay.
purple. Oh, that's not a good blue. That's closer.
And then just re-letter accordingly.
Yeah, that will be done automatically. I'm not going to worry about that. So this is your amendment, which it would strike A again and change it to each delegate has the ability to cast an electronic ballot that produces a conforming physical ballot, and the rest stays the same. New subsection, delegates must deliver each physical
How about
ballot,
their physical ballot?
their physical ballot.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think that makes more sense if
Okay.
you want my opinion.
All right.
To their delegation chair, who then places each into a sealed envelope and delivers that envelope to the tellers.
Do we need more detail after each, or do we know what we're talking about?
You can add.
I mean, I'm
who
okay with it.
places them
Sure.
because each
Well, not
almost,
the delegate. What if they're placing the delegates? No.
well, I think the immediate precedent is,
Yes.
but because this is actually, I think, a defect potentially in the substitute language, which we'll have an opportunity to amend if we wanted to, is it almost sounds like each individual ballot has to have its own envelope.
Mm-hmm.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, just bring it to your attention since you do have a flight to catch. We are at time.
Okay, Mr. Latham, though, is that your amendment or is there
Yes.
more?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Yes, is there a motion to, well, Mr. Molman, you had your hand raised.
I was raising my hand to speak to this. So.
Okay, we need a motion to extend time if we're going to continue. Otherwise, the meeting is ended with us in this posture of this amendment.
I don't think we're going to get much further, but I'll move to extend for 5.
Okay, there's a motion to extend for 5 minutes. Is there any objection to a motion to extend for 5 minutes?
Objection.
There's an objection. Ms. Arrowood, if you would take a roll call vote. Ms. Arrowood. You're muted.
Arrowood says yes. Rocco,
No.
Sizelsky,
Yes.
Latham,
Yes.
Martin,
Abstain.
okay, Molman,
We
We
couldn't
missed
hear you.
Ken there.
Ken, we could
Maybe
we didn't hear
unmute
you.
and give your vote.
Oh, let me try again. Yes.
yes, okay. Rowlett,
Yes.
Rufo, I'm sorry, Dr. Chuck Moulton, Dr. Chuck Moulton,
Dr. Moulton, you're muted. Go on and we'll come back to him.
All right, Seebeck, Mike Seebeck,
No,
all right. Dr. Chuck Moulton? Dr. Moulton? If I get no response, I would call Dean Rogers.
I do not see him on the call.
Madam
Okay.
Secretary, wouldn't it be David Roberson?
Oh, okay, you're correct. It is David Roberson. David Roberson.
For purposes of clarification, a no vote extends, a yes vote ends.
No, a yes vote would extend for 5 minutes. A no vote would have us adjourn.
No.
All right. Madam Chair, right now we have 5 yes, 3 no, and 1 abstain.
So it fails without my vote because yes needs to be at least twice as much as the no. So we are at adjournment. Let me move this out of the way to let you all know the next meeting date. I didn't mean to try to create a poll. 1 second. I hate the way this floating menu. So if we go over to the agenda, wrong screen. Our next meeting date is August 10th. And our procedural posture when we start is on this amendment language. However, if we think we're at a spot where we'd like to vote on this, someone could always start an email ballot to dispose of this in the 2 weeks between meetings. That's entirely up to you guys. Remember, we do allow email ballots if we think this has been talked enough. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to have on the agenda for next meeting as well, the scheduling of our next town hall. I see there are hands up. I can't keep this room open because it's on my account and I'm not having Zoom open for 3 days. So,
Madam Secretary, I just need to ask you a question.
what I'm going to do, yeah, that'll be fun. We're going, first I'm going to declare us adjourned and I'm going to leave the room open for you guys to talk while I'm still packing and stuff. And then I'll so you can have some discussion. And then we'll close it down when I'm literally leaving out the door. So we are adjourned at 11:06 Eastern, 9:06 Mountain